For those that don't know me, I'm Julie Szmyd. I'm host for this room and club. So while we're pinging folks in and trying to fill seats, be sure to follow me, all our moderators, the panelists and co-hosts here today. Anyone that has a little party hat next to them, be sure to follow them. Those are our new Clubhouse members. And for those, additionally, to support those using closed caption, please state your name when you begin speaking and state your name at the end. So for example, my name is Julie and I'm done speaking. We do encourage anyone to raise their digital hand if inspired. We'll do our very best to get to everybody. But we do like to have folks from the audience participate. Please note our club is called Consuli Conversations. In addition to this room, we also host a long COVID and clinical trials room. You can learn more by following our club. Just tap the little greenhouse at the top. You'll see all our upcoming rooms in our profile. You can follow Consuli Conversations and be notified when our rooms are happening. And for any direct questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, please direct message me. You'll find my email in my bio and our social medias in there as well. You can connect to us that way. Love hearing from you guys. So if you want to join the panel, if you have any recommendations for folks, any questions at all, definitely reach out. For those that don't yet know Consuli, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our individual data is worth approximately $20,000 per year. So we help people choose who gets access to and how their personal information is used, and if and when desired, get them paid for their data and make medicine better. So we do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent. Our members receive smart-matched individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in clinical trials and data trials. There's no cost to join our movement, and you can learn more at consuli.net. That's consuli.net. I'll pin that to the top of the room. It's now my pleasure to turn the floor over to our room moderator, Elizabeth Dreicer, who is a philanthropist, activist, and co-founder and CEO of Consuli. Elizabeth will be introducing our distinguished panelists and guests. Elizabeth, now over to you. This is Julie, and I'm done speaking. Elizabeth?
Yeah, apologies, guys. Okay, I am here. Thanks, Julie. And thanks for all of your help. I just had to find the mute button. So thanks for making this event possible, Julianne, Spencer, and welcome to all. We're happy to be able to host and facilitate this in this room and this important discussion. I also want to draw everybody's attention to our virtual whiteboard, which is a collection of a lot of the dialogue that's happened before, and certainly we expect that we'll continue to evolve that dialogue. So, Julie, I don't know if you have the opportunity to pin that here shortly. You can find the link in my bio or in Julie's bio. It's a public virtual whiteboard, so we do invite participation. And it is now my pleasure to introduce you to other members of our team and our fabulous guest panelists. First up, I'd like to introduce Spencer Gurley. Spencer is a recent computer science grad from the University of California, Santa Cruz, with a focus on ethical algorithms, fairness and bias within machine learning and artificial intelligence, and the implications, the social and tech implications of each. As an undergrad, he was instrumental in the creation of the Center for Applied Values and Ethics in Advanced Technologies, as well as establishing a curriculum for the course Ethics and Algorithms. Spencer's a member of our team, and in partnership with us is helping us stand up the Data Dignity Alliance. Spencer, the mic is now yours for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking.
Hi, everyone. Glad we were able to all get together and have this conversation. And I don't have a lot of opening remarks. I'll mostly be responding today. So super excited to see where the dialogue goes to. I'm Spencer, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks so much, Spencer. Okay, so next up is Cody Hill. Cody is the Executive Director of the Data Union and Head of Growth at Upstate NC. As a former product leader at Facebook, Cody decided to leave big tech after being exposed to the mounting negative externalities it was causing for normal people. He left to co-found Upstate NC, a state legislation tracking platform, and now is the Executive Director of the Data Union. The Data Union is a movement founded to advance the cause of giving value back to individuals through use of their data. It is a collection of experts and resources where people can learn what's going on in the complicated space of data privacy and stay on top of legislative matters. Cody, really delighted to have you with us. The mic is yours. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hey, everybody. This is Cody speaking. Great to be here. Excited to participate in the conversation and bring whatever perspective I can. Like it was mentioned, I had been working at Facebook for about 3 years on their largest growth product, which is all in emerging markets, and got a really interesting insight into how kind of big tech functions and just how systematically these algorithms are created to be very complicated and hard to understand. Now I put my efforts towards using technology to kind of disrupt and make more efficient the political space with my startup, Upstate North Carolina. And then I also work with the Data Union, which is working to bring together different people in the space that care about data protection, privacy, and we're helping to inform people of kind of what's going on in the space, because it is a bit of a confusing space. Looking forward to the conversation, and thanks for having me here. This is Cody, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, Cody. Appreciate that. Next up, I'd like to introduce, looks like Lisa's still not with us, yes? So yeah, I'll introduce Linda. So Linda MacDonald is the founding director of the Center for Applied Values and Ethics and Advanced Technologies, aka Caveat, at Crown College at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She is a recovering attorney, but also an ethicist, futurist, educator, and advisor with over 30 years of experience in a variety of sectors, including exponential technology, healthcare, government, education, business ethics, and futures forecasting. It is my distinct pleasure to turn the mic to Linda. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that very kind introduction. Medical leave for about 8 weeks, and I can see some of the faces have changed. I spoke with Lisa this morning. Unfortunately, she is not feeling well this morning. She has I expect that will pass quickly. Sorry, no pun intended. And we can expect her back in the next meetings. But it's exciting to be here. I'm so pleased to meet some of the new faces here and to continue our conversation. Spencer has been such a gift to both of our organizations, and we're very grateful. And I am just looking forward to listening and contributing and seeing what we can do to use emerging technologies in a way that helps equity, make the earth, make the world a more just, viable, just, equitable, and viable place. Thank you, Elizabeth. This is Linda, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's really good to have you back with us, and glad that you're back to health and can be with us. So really delighted at that. Next up, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Scott. Jonathan is a mobile security engineer and PhD student in computer science. He works for a crypto company as a mobile security engineer and teaches ethical mobile forensics to human rights defenders around the world. Jonathan, we're delighted to have you with us. I'm turning the mic to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Thank you. Yes, this is Jonathan Scott speaking. I appreciate you all having me here and on the panel. And so, as was said, I am a public security engineer, and my core focus right now is securing the metaverse, securing blockchain. That's for my work side, I suppose you can say. And I suppose my hobby, and really something that's very dear to me, and something that I feel like is a must do part of my life is making sure that spyware is removed from as many systems as we can, as I can help remove them from. So yes, I do work with human rights defenders, particularly the frontline defenders, and I do teach mobile ethical forensics, data extraction, analysis, and I hope that I can offer some value to this conversation. This is Jonathan. I'm done speaking.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Really glad to have you with us and appreciate your work and your hobby. Next up, we have Eric. Also, I apologize. I've already messed up your last name. Apologies. So you can. Eric is an entrepreneur, scientist, and CTO of Symbols, Pi, and Power, Inc., as well as a researcher. His work uses machine learning algorithms to advance genetic engineering capabilities. Eric, glad to have you. I'm turning the mic to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now. Eric, do we have you?
I see him unmiked, but I don't hear his voice.
I know. I'm guessing this might be one of those situations, Christine, where he has to exit and come back to get his audio.
Yeah, I would suggest that, to just leave the room, Eric, and then come right back in, and it should fix that. Cross your fingers.
Yeah, right. It's a constant struggle, isn't it? Okay, so Eric, as soon as you are able to come back or get your audio, we'll definitely come back to you. And in the interim period of time, I'll introduce our next guest, Christine von Raesfeld. Christine is the founder and CEO of People with Empathy. Christine is a leader in bringing a critical needed patient perspective to cutting edge medical innovations. She's committed to providing patients with chronic and rare diseases with the support they need. Christine works with patient advocacy organizations, industry representatives, and individual patients and their loved ones. Living with many rare and chronic diseases herself, she believes that the only way to ensure health equity is to leverage one's own data. Christine, we're very much thankful to have you with us again. I'm turning the mic to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Thank you, Elizabeth. This is Christine. And really, I'm a patient. I think I grew up in Silicon Valley, so I think I have a very different view of data. I've been able to use my own data to improve my quality of life. But I've also seen it being used in ways where it shouldn't. So really, we're hitting a digital age where it's going to be the largest distribution of wealth ever. And I think it's a chance to also even the playing fields by using this data in a way and informing people of the value of their collective data. So, and I like to say my data is my song. And if you want to play my music, you've got to pay me.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate your perspective and your being with us. Okay, so I'm just going to check in for a moment and see if Eric was able to get his audio working. Eric, do we have you yet? I see you're still looking like you're on mute, but before when you weren't on mute, we weren't hearing you. So I'm going to give you a moment here. Thanks everyone for your patience while we try and get Eric to the stage and share. Okay, we'll come back to you, Eric. Sorry that it's somehow not working just yet, but Try again. All right, so next up we have Manuel Koshi. Hopefully I've said your name somewhat right. Manuel is a systems architect with a lifelong research interest and focus in the design space of intelligence amplification. Manuel, without further ado, I'm turning the mic to you for your opening remarks. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking for now.
Hi, thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Spencer, for inviting me. We had a great conversation the last time. Happy to be on this panel and really interested to bring light to the importance of individual behavioral biometrics and the potential of the design space of intelligence amplification. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Manuel. I appreciate learning more as we dig into the conversation. So, Eric, when you get your mic working, please just take yourself off mute and we'll definitely get your opening remarks. Apologies that we weren't able to do that just yet, but we'll go ahead and get started here. All right, so, and let me just check in with Spencer. I think we've introduced everybody that we have at this point that we can hear. So, all right, so just thinking about what's before us and what's most important at this moment in time, I want to open up the floor and I'd love to go around the room here with our panelists. And just for the audience benefit, you know, for those that want to participate in the conversation, feel free to raise your hand. We'll end up getting to you a little bit later, but by all means, put yourself on the stage and we'll get you guys in order. Really do want to have a participatory discussion, so we invite that. And first up, as we think about, again, where we are at this moment in history, what you guys are each working on, what you think is most. I'd love to go around the room and hear from each of you, and I might go in opposite order here. Manuel, you know, as you're thinking about this, you know, this field, what are the things that you're most aware of right now or think are the biggest issues before us? I'd like to turn the mic to you.
Sure, thanks. Well, we live in a very interesting time. As I stated in my profile, I'm 44 years old now. My first exposure to artificial intelligence, I was 7 years old. I got my first chess computer. And considering I was in boarding school all my life, I got my entire life to explore it. And from the time I was in my teens, I kind of gave up on the idea of like robots and started thinking about human potential. Because having been paying attention to my neurocognitive dynamics and my experience in chess playing, it was very intuitive for me to like turn the potential of like machine prediction and algorithmic thinking towards what the potential is for the human nervous system. And in the past 15 years, since my last job, which was with the State Department in Afghanistan doing psychological operations using all types of mediums, it became very clear to me that one of the most important things in the world to protect is individual behavioral biometrics, because we now live in a cybernetic ecology. This is no longer a kind of like world where things are connected and this internet is on top of it. It's rather that each nervous system inhabits an ecology where the potential for feedback is at mirror latency pretty much. And so if you're wearing a wearable device or if you're looking at your phone, the camera is potentially taking a snapshot of you and you're in the mall and there's a camera there. Every aspect of your behavior that is in real sense unconscious to you can be captured, can be mapped, and can be used to determine psychographic profiles and or find ways to manipulate you into action. And the difference between the moment, you know, as it exists today, where most of our attention is focused on privacy and digital rights in a very surface kind of way, is that in a real sense, that boat's already sailed. And the meaning that when you choose to join a social network or you buy a device or you're interacting online, whether it's email or other, you're volunteering your presence and you're volunteering data to a server or to an organization. that now has the right to write a contract with you and say, this is how they will use it. But the difference with individual behavioral biometrics data is that you don't volunteer it. It's taken. And whether or not these institutions are taking it deliberately and using it deliberately is not the question. The point is that they will begin to integrate it into their systems and understanding of human behavior. And what's dangerous with that is that when you're connected to the human body, whether it be through a camera that's taking pictures intermittently, or a wearable device, or things that essentially can capture, your behavior, there is a one-to-one correlation between your arousal dynamics and the system's understanding of you. And that creates, for the first time in history, a way to deliberately touch your nervous system in terms of subjugating your ability to think. And that's never happened before in the history of man. And it's one thing to create a psychographic profile and put an impression in your purview while you're on Facebook. This is another thing completely to be able to understand your attentional and arousal dynamic as you're surfing the internet, whether it be through your ability to the way, to the cadence of your typing, or a wearable device. And this is the world that we are actually entering. It's an ecology, and it's true cybernetic ecology. If we don't really step up the pressure, we will literally be throwing away agency and pursuit of basic privacy. And so that's why I'll just leave that. I'll stop there for now. We can continue the conversation. Cheers.
Manuel, I really appreciate that. You're raising many issues here, all of which are timely and moment. Thinking about this from an HRB or from an IRB perspective, excuse me, Linda, I'm wondering if I can call on you next, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on, where Caveat is on this particular very important issue of sort of nervous system manipulation, and us sort of willingly taking that ride. At least some of us that are wearing wearables and the like. And also, where is the human, IRB in these systems? Linda, the mic is yours.
Thank you. One of the things that we've been working on, Lisa, Spencer, our team has certainly been putting together a project. And in fact, Consuli, we have a meeting next week to talk a little bit more about this, because right now the ecosystem, as the previous speaker said, is just so out of balance. How do we help? What's happening is that this is contributing to the inequality gap. And as you said repeatedly, Elizabeth, this is an equity issue. We're planning to have our first meeting this spring and get together a tech ethics review board, a little different than an IRB, because IRBs are strictly, they are strictly anthropocentric, that is, they're human-centric. They really, by law, they are called an IRB, are restricted to considering only human subject protection and cannot address broader societal issues here. And because this is such a complex issue, it's more, yes, our data is being taken and it's being used, and that without compensation is contributing to the inequality gap. So how do we tackle such a sticky problem? We have to take it from multiple avenues. One discipline is not necessarily going to be is going to solve this. It's not going to be economics. It's not going to be AI. It's not going to be just the social sciences. It's going to require people coming in from all different disciplines and coming up with, see, like, I think the right word being might be a transdisciplinary approaching it from issues of policy. How do we encourage companies that are doing this? How do we encourage and discourage them at the same time, using a carrot and the stick? We put it into place to dissuade dissuade companies from abusing our research. Abusing our data, and what sort of rights individual users have. I'm getting a message that I have a poor connection, so I'm not sure I'm coming through.
You're coming through kind of a little choppy. I think we can kind of get the idea. I think we're following that. I want to ask a very pointed question about IRB, specifically relative to Manuel's point around these systems that are now, sort of in this feedback, one-to-one arousal dynamics, with the nervous system. And I'm thinking specifically of a device that I recently saw. I won't say what the name of the company is, but let's just call it, item X. It's a device that basically is worn on the wrist, it's sensing anxiety, and then it's delivering the equivalent of an anti-anxiety sort of electrical stimuli, right?
Right.
So, when we think about IRB in this context, and Manuel, I'd love to hear, some other examples. I'm wondering whether or not in many ways, these systems are being unleashed without the, kind of traditional real study.
Can I respond to that?
Of course.
I mean, part of the, yes, I can visualize what equipment you might be speaking about. And the problem is that IRBs might look at this and they are restricted to how it impacts the human subject, not the broader ripple effects. And that will be more from Manuel about some of the other things, some of the other devices, because that's exactly what we'd like to look at.
Thank you so much, Linda. In the interest of, I want to go next, if we can, to Jonathan. Well, actually, Linda, before we go on, when you think about the things that are most important, I'm just sort of taking the pulse as we open this up. From your perspective, I know I asked you to specifically respond to Manuel's point, but when you think about what's most important at this moment in this data dignity realm, what are you thinking about? What is Caveat thinking about? Other than hosting this important transdisciplinary working group.
Policy.
Okay.
Getting laws into place.
Okay, thank you. Really appreciate that. So next, I'd like to go to Jonathan Scott. Jonathan, thinking about what you perceive as the most important piece of what we're grappling with right now, what's in your mind? What are you working on?
Sure. This is Jonathan speaking. One of my latest projects with, let's say, particularly, say, hacking the metaverse is bringing awareness to the fact that we have forgotten about security in regard to our hardware. And I'm going to be starting a series called Hacking the Metaverse. And I'm starting off with, if you all can remember, the Samsung Galaxy Gear VR headset. And I'm going to be teaching everyone, these ways to literally, hack their VR headsets and take data and, of course, for educational purposes, and to, inspire people to create solutions to these issues that are not being raised currently. There's lots of talk about privacy and security, and I have not heard one conversation about the hardware associated to this new ecosystem that we're supposedly supposed to be joining soon, which I don't see a lot of people even participating in the metaverse, to be quite frank. And I think that since we've forgotten about the hardware component to all of this, we can speak about software layers, and we can speak about databases and how the information is being collected and where it's going, and we can try to secure that, but it doesn't matter if the hardware we're using is actually the most vulnerable part. So just recently, I was a major vulnerability approved by LG Mobile. And this vulnerability affects every single LG mobile device in the world ever created, from the beginning of Android to Android 10. And I posted it in my Twitter. And it's a backdoor that was built into LG from the beginning. The same backdoor exists in Samsung devices, mobile devices, VR, tablets, IoT devices. All these backdoors exist, and I've known about them for years. And finally, my ethos has changed, and I am reporting them and trying to close those holes. I do believe that it is something that needs to be spoken about, and it's something that needs to be brought into the forefront as we are talking about data privacy, because most of us don't realize that, let's just say that we get rid of our mobile devices, or we get rid of our headsets, our VR headsets, our Oculus, and even the wired Oculuses, that the information that's still left behind on those chips is tremendous. They can be recovered even if you believe that you've data wiped them. So it is something that has to be addressed if we're going to actually go forward in securing our data. This is Jonathan Scott. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Okay, well, that's somber. But I think we have to look at these things with intellectual honesty. So I appreciate you bringing that to the fore. Christine, I'd like to ask you the same question. I know you're coming at it from, the human side, which I think is an important element here to add to the mix. What are you thinking about the most at this point? What do you perceive as the most important thing that's needed for your cohort, and what are you thinking about there?
So really, this is Christine, and I think my number one thing is education and awareness. I mean, these issues that we're talking about, they're not normal to other people. Most people, data is not something tangible, so most people don't want to think about it, right? They're okay with Facebook taking this data because it makes their lives easier and more convenient, but they're not seeing the other side of it. Even I wanted to address too, I have a wearable device, not a wearable device. I have an ICD, which is a pacemaker defibrillator that's Bluetooth enabled. When I had this implanted, it was a matter of life and death, but there was no discussion around the fact that I could be hacked into, that, where is this data going that's constantly being connected? All of those things were not an issue that we talked about. So I think there's so many things here, and it really comes down to that education and awareness and making people understand what that data is doing. And really, people talk about it like their own data doesn't really matter, but educating them around the awareness on collective data, and how valuable that is together. So for me, it's all about that education and awareness, and then moving into, regulatory, because I think if any industry can talk about how they can change it, but it comes down to the laws. And I wish Alice was here as well, so she could put her say into that. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much, Christine. Really appreciate it. Cody, may I ask you the same question?
Hey there, sure, yeah. Man, lots of heavy topics here, lots to comment on. I think that Manuel's points about kind of the Orwellian nature of how every little breadcrumb of everything that you do can and is tracked is something that, you know, it does sound like a little bit like crazy, and I think to a lot of people even thinking like that is not even accessible, but it is actually like very, very true. And the scary part about that is having worked inside Facebook and been around people that are doing this. I mean, the scary part to me is that a lot of our smartest minds and brightest people from great institutions are, you know, going to these companies and using their brain power and hardworking talents to make this stuff even more and more potent. And so, you know, for instance, like inside Facebook, they have all the kind of happy marketing stories that they tell workers to keep them dedicated and caring about what they're doing. Like they are connecting the world, and they are giving people the information that they want to see, and kind of all this good stuff. And you've never been in an environment with so many well-meaning, empathetic, hardworking people who are completely ignoring the negative externalities of what they're building. And to me, that was kind of the thing where it's like, wow, like all these people who should be working on making sure this stuff does not get out of hand are in a weird way like doing the exact opposite. That was a big catalyst for me quitting Facebook. Kind of what Jonathan was saying around the kind of metaverse and all these potential holes in hardware. One of the things that I worked at Facebook was their growth program, adding new users in emerging markets. All new users are coming from essentially in the, you know, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. That's where all these big tech companies are growing. And with the scale of these products and how many people that they reach, it is impossible to plug every single little hole. Even, you know, 0.1% of a product like not working correctly or having a security issue at the scale that these companies are at, it can affect, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And unfortunately, the incentives to find that 0.1% hole and exploit it are only growing. And lots of, whether it's, you know, geopolitical foreign forces that are looking to kind of exploit holes, and whether it's in hardware, like Jonathan was saying, or in our software platforms that we know well, the incentive to take advantage of that and exploit it is continuing to grow. And so it's great to see people on here who are also very, very smart and looking at these problems. In terms of the metaverse, like Jonathan was talking about, I am one of those people who has not looked much into it, but I'm glad that there are people like you who are, because that will certainly be kind of full of bad actors, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, like I think Linda mentioned, like this is an equity issue. Unfortunately, the most vulnerable people are the people that this affects the most. For example, this is somewhat related, but think of all the robocalls that we're all getting now. Think of how many calls from random numbers that you don't know that you're getting, and where those coming from. My 96-year-old grandma, she gets calls to her home phone probably 4 or 5 every single day. And she picks them up and she listens to them. And of course, you know, to people who are more familiar with technology, it's a lot more obvious to see a scam, and you know, to us it's not as big of a deal. But the more vulnerable people, whether it's with age or whether it's with kind of socioeconomic status, those are the people that this hurts the most. And I guess I just wish that more people at big tech companies who are these ostensibly liberal, empathetic people, at least on paper, I wish that there was more talk about this stuff and the negative externalities that was being created. So that's kind of one of the things that I would like to kind of help get out there is, unfortunately, like it's only getting worse because a lot of the brightest people are working on how to take a snippet of you typing on your phone or the way that your heartbeat increases when you're looking at whatever website, and kind of using that to kind of best make you into a more monetizable unit. And that's kind of how we're seen by a lot of these companies is unfortunately just monetizable units, and how can they move us around to act in ways that will benefit them. So I guess I'm rambling a bit here, but I think these things cannot be understated or overstated, I guess would be more correct. Cannot be overstated in how important they are. So this is Cody, and I'm done talking for now.
Thank you so much, Cody. And I just want to check on Eric. I'm hoping that maybe we got your audio. I see that you're still here, so minimally listening. If you're able to take yourself off mute, and yes,
Can you hear me now?
wonderful. Yes, we can hear you now. We'd love to hear your opening thoughts and also respond to the question of, what's the most pressing issue from your perspective. So Eric, the mic is yours. This is Elizabeth. I'm done speaking for now.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sorry about the technical glitches earlier. Just using a new Rodecaster or some sort of audio equipment that I obviously don't know how to use well enough. But in terms of data privacy, like the domain where I operate is biotech, and given the kind of sensing technologies that we have there, it seems to be almost an unfair advantage that device makers have against all of us. And so just in general, I try to be very aware when I'm designing and creating the next generation of sensors or devices, that we do give people the sovereignty over their own data. And that means you can send things to the device, but let's try to make it a one-way direction, or let's try to think of an air gap where it's not just easily always connected. So I think we may see a back to fundamentals, or back to more basic design in some instances, especially in healthcare, where we try to protect people's privacy of their data. But in terms of healthcare, I think we can also do a lot with legislation. I think that's kind of our best bet, because once your data is or does exist out in the wild, what protections do you have to mitigate some of that risk that thereafter emerges? And I think, like in the case of insurance companies, they tend to use that information against us, but they don't have to say that. There's a lot of little things where we want equity and equality, but we also want sovereignty over our own data. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I'm Eric, and I'm done for now.
Thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate that. And as we jump into the next part of our discussion, I want to see, Spencer, if you have anything that you'd like to add before we jump to a dialogue.
Yeah, sure. A couple of highlights. Going back to Manuel's point about kind of this biogenetic information, how it's kind of being used against us. It's so true that for the first time in history, we're seeing this feedback loop that kind of changes itself to affect us more. Whereas before, you might see something and it gives you an effect and the feedback loop stops there. We're continuously seeing this kind of fight or flight response being increased, which can be kind of led to why people have such extreme reactions now, and kind of why anxiety and depression are at an all-time high, and just kind of continuously entering this feedback loop that's changing to make you feel more and more affected is just going to end up being really crazy. So we'll see how that ends up. But one point that I kind of slightly disagreed with was when he mentioned that privacy it's almost too late to be thinking about privacy, which I agree with, but I don't think it's too late to be thinking about data as a human right. We've kind of seen the internet come out kind of completely gates open, and kind of are just now realizing, hey, maybe that was a mistake. Maybe we should have put regulations and kind of thought about this at the time. And I think going forward with things, especially like bio data and also brain data and the metaverse, and kind of coming into that, human rights will definitely be more of a focus, hopefully, because we kind of saw what happened when we didn't do that with the internet. So I think people are starting to come around to that idea. And then also talking about Cody's point, where he mentioned how people are kind of unaware that they're falling prey to these scams where they're giving away their data. I think another really interesting one is kind of like the not tech literate group, which might not have anything to do with socioeconomic or age, but just kind of like how as more and more people get smartphones and they come into kind of like the internet age, which at least the US has already been in for like the past decade, 2 decades. There's kind of no rule book on like how to behave online and how not to fall prey to certain things, and kind of like, so I just think it's interesting talking about like as more and more people kind of enter the internet age, and we, I think we're already at 80% of the world on the internet. What's going to happen when the extra 20% come in and there's no rules on how to behave, and kind of, I think it's going to lead to more and more extreme reactions. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
Thanks so much, Spencer. Just thinking about, something that comes up over and over, and I think is a theme in the Miro board, the public virtual board, that thank you, Julie, for pinning for those that are interested in taking a look at the plethora of, elements that we've been discussing on this, this big topic of how we achieve data dignity. So many facets, and we're seeing and hearing some of those exposited today. What I'm reflecting on, though, is this, persistent reality, and myself included. I got pushed an iOS update today. What am I really going to say? No. Is it really? Do I get to say no to the terms of service? So there's these real fundamental practical issues of conveniences. And I think maybe Christine, you were saying in a different way, I'm paraphrasing, but we're basically selling ourselves out for convenience, right? And so then the question becomes, how do we make doing what's best for ourselves and for society the more convenient option, right? Because we're in a battle on so many levels with, it seems like, convenience. So I'd just like to open that up for dialogue, and then we'll come back to some of our other thorny issues. But I don't think we've ever really taken this one on. We wring our hands about it, we talk about it, but we really aren't, addressing what the heck do we do about it. Okay, yes, I see we have a guest, and I apologize for not knowing what your name is. So maybe Gavin, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I've got a proposal that at least speaks about the magnitude of change that we might try and embrace for when trying to diagnose what you're describing there. And to me, I'm seeing, particularly, we're listening to the testimony right now for crypto, and some of the questions yet again, just like when Facebook got testified, or Mark Zuckerberg, it was just like, wow, some of these questions are so, it's clear the level of unfortunate ignorance on the topic. And so what I'm getting at is that, some of the, our America was established in 1776 like that, and something like that. And, just the trajectory of nation states, like the lifespans of them are, on average somewhere around 250 years. And, we're right around there. So we may ask ourselves, have we run the utility of our initial, founding of the nation? And should we be looking at a new system to reorient ourselves globally. And one of the things that's emerging for me is a DAO, like a decentralized autonomous organization, and how communities can begin to work in a more localized version, but on a global interface. So, and the incentive structures that are infused in it, where people can make sense of their realities more efficiently and more personally, and they see how their actions, affect their community, that digital community or metaverse community directly. And so, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up as a new way to maybe look at that emerging tech. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Gavin. Folks on the panel, if you would like to respond to anything that Gavin brought in, and also I'll put back on the floor that, how do we make doing the right thing convenient? Yes, Christine, the mic's yours.
Can I go back to the convenience part of it? Because I think, we're not educated around the data as a general population. We don't see the potential of what's out there. We have companies like 23andMe where people are actually paying them to collect the data, and they're not sure where that's going or what it's being used for. I think that idea of convenience, that all of this has made this easy, is dangerous. And we really need to find out, when we are giving this data up to companies, are they selling it to third parties, or, but even just really that discussion to people in general. You talk about things that are coming, a digital twin for yourself, and that data that's going to be generated from that, and who has agency, and that is above and beyond most people's heads. So we need to find a way to really explain to the general public how this works in a way that they're going to then start protecting their own data. I'm in California, I know a few of you are as well, and we have the CCPA. You're scrolling through websites, you have, as a California resident, the option to say, do not sell my data. You don't have that in other states. So those are things that I think we have to think about. If people are making moves in the area where they're collecting our data, that's probably where we should, take our guidance from as well. But I'm Christine, and that's my perspective.
Thank you so much, Christine. And this is Elizabeth. Linda, I see that you're jumping in, so I'm going to give you the mic.
Thank you. Christine. Thank you for bringing up thank you for bringing this up, because I think we do need to work on the awareness and education. So it's through art, media. For what Jonathan had said earlier about the data, about the hardware being hacked. I think people are not necessarily tech savvy, are just not aware of how this could be used. Jonathan said, you think you're logging out, but you're leaving all this information behind. And I think that giving some hard examples or building a story around it, there are some TV shows that do this that are quite popular or interesting, a little bit like Black Mirror, some other shows that address issues in technology. But yes, I agree, Christine. One of the hardware, I won't mention a particular company, but one of the hardware developments interfaces, I think that raises an awful lot of ethical issues, and how that is going to be, how that information is going to be used, gathered. I think people on their own to see it, and so we should be educating them through storytelling, not necessarily shoving it down their throats, but making it entertaining. Art helps elevate us and transcend the day to day. And so this is a great opportunity, I think, for perhaps to bring on some people who are master storytellers about this. So anyway, I just want to say that this is Linda, and
Thanks so much, Linda. I appreciate that. Yeah, Christine.
I was just going to say, I love the idea that, to bring it out to the media. And I know that you mentioned some of these shows, but I think we also have to look at the way that we bring it out to talk about them. A lot of these stories and movies that are made around technology are making people question what the technology can do, and that's making them look towards the worst side of what this can do. And we really need to be looking at what the problems are going to be and kind of heading them off before we get there. But if we don't have enough knowledge, and then I hear it all the time when we talk about implanted devices in people and how that could really help restore their quality of life. But then you have normal people saying, oh, so you can take over our brains, and and it becomes very distorted on what the capabilities are versus how people think we're going to take advantage of them.
I think that's a really good point you're raising, Christine, as well. I just want to come back for a second, though, to kind of this very simple, this is my practical, sort of side being exposited here, folks, is, the convenience has to be, greater than the inconvenience of anything, right? So there's an equation. And right now, if we think about, what's happening, the convenience side is definitely in the undignified category, and it's super inconvenient to sort of activate dignity, right? You can kind of say that in the simplest way. And so until that gets solved, I think we have real issues. I noticed that we have Heather, I see you on the stage. We'll get to you in just a second. I want to make sure before I conclude this part of our dialogue that we hear from others. Cody, Eric, Manuel, thoughts about this, inconvenient truth, if you will. I see that. I think we've got one of you. Yeah, please go ahead. I see you came up. You. Jonathan or Manuel, whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead, it's fine, I'll wait.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to just say Jonathan, just so sorry about that.
Sure, no problem.
Apologies for courtesy, yeah.
Yes, so this is Jonathan speaking. I think one of the things that I like to definitely let people know is that I don't want to spread any fear, doubt, and uncertainty. And this is something that a lot of times we may tend to focus on. I know that's the last bit that I spoke about could be kind of scary, I suppose you can say. But what the things that I expose are very large vulnerabilities that affect everyone. And there are some instances where I have exposed a vulnerability that may not affect everyone, but generally I expose the bad actors and the vulnerabilities that, like I mentioned before, affect every single device in the world. Even this past one as it pertains to LG mobile devices. This is important to understand because on a mass scale like that, this is how spyware is introduced into the systems, through vulnerabilities in the chipsets, the hardware layer components of our mobile devices. And then that then further allows for firmware and software vulnerabilities to be exposed because of the initial vulnerability that exists in these devices. I think that if we spread fear into people, I think that it could definitely stop the advancement of technology, which I don't believe this room is doing. It's raising awareness, but I also want to let people know there are solutions coming about, and that these rooms are, there are a lot of intelligent people in these rooms, and I do actually speak to many people after rooms like this, and we do come up with solutions for these issues that are raised together. So I think that's a very positive outcome of these topics that are being discussed, because it is that I believe this is the point, right, to raise the awareness, and then, well, what are we going to do about it? And engaged in many actual side projects with many people that I've met in Clubhouse, and we are we're putting out code, and we're putting out solutions to stop a lot of these vulnerabilities, and with no financial incentive behind what we're doing. So I want to let people know that there are very positive things coming of this, and beyond all the things that may be talked about. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I really appreciate you adding that perspective, and just to echo what you're saying, we're hosting this room to actually look at, the elephant earnestly, with the idea that, we are intending to examine 4 solutions. So I so appreciate you bringing that into this discussion in a very pointed way. I want to turn the mic back to Manuel. Manuel, I think you were going to jump in on this last point.
Elizabeth, I wanted to say there are 2 key approaches that we're talking about here. Christine is bringing up something that's extremely important, which is education. And this is why I only use the term literacy when I talk about technology. Like, I don't, in organization, in the Evergreen Initiative and the Guardian Initiative, which is the work we're trying to do with law enforcement right now, for example, is to educate, not only educate, but we want to essentially do the first intelligence verification pilot with the police. And it's interesting to think about in the last 10 to 15 years, police departments across the United States have adopted artificial intelligence for kind of like pre-crime and evidence-based crime prevention. Wholeheartedly, they've adopted it, and it takes one step back to recognize that you're essentially feeding a monster, and that you're essentially cultivating a feedback loop where you're constantly invigorating the community to feel this kind of cops and robbers ecology, right? So you're just stuck in this cops and robbers ecology, where it's criminals to cops, criminals to cops, and then the feedback from trying to profile individuals or patrol areas that have essentially in the data map and in the heat map sense of it are hot crime areas. That's a financialization of these tools, and in the use of what would be public safety, right? But they're not really, preventing crime. They're not trained. They're not helping communities, and individuals in the communities to learn to actually take care of themselves in ways that they don't have to resort to crime. So what is happening here? Like, are we going to keep having this back and forth with the technology as if it's there, right? As if it has something to say about how it's used, right? And this is why I'm really very interested in Christine's point of education, because what we're dealing with is a paradigm shift. And when you're dealing with a paradigm shift, you can't try and approach it with the same thinking that you had in the existing one. So I really like to talk about technology in terms of literacy, and make people recognize that inside a cybernetic ecology, there is a new literacy that needs to be deployed, that needs to be shared, that needs to be cultivated, and it needs to happen from elementary to grad school. Right now, like most universities in the United States have artificial intelligence departments, and none of them have intelligence amplification departments. In fact, I'm saying this right now, this is probably super strange to you guys. But in reality, intelligence amplification is more fundamental than artificial intelligence. You have a nervous system, right? And you've had intelligence amplification experiences all of your life. You adopted language as a tool to improve your thinking. And you have a super rational experience with other people by communicating ideas that otherwise, if you weren't literate, we could not do. So how do we begin to share that information and make people understand what it means to live in a new ecology? Because just as the printing press was relevant 300 or 400 years ago, however, when it was, you know, it changed the control that the Vatican had over all of the world by allowing people to become literate, begin to share ideas on their own and create new value paradigms. And that brought in the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution. We are in a similar, if not exact, position because the tool is different, but the goal and what's being gained is the same. It's literacy. It's due literacy. Sorry. And in this case, the printing press is machine learning and algorithmic thinking, and we have to begin to start thinking about what schools and elementary schools look like that take into account these tools and how students should be thinking with regards to them. Because prediction is now a resource, right? Artificial intelligence is not the resource. It's the computing that's the resource, right? The way Facebook, it's funny, when we were in Afghanistan, we were working on the stuff we were doing, trying, at least thinking from our own little perspective that we were trying to do nation building. And at the same, so we were essentially using these tools to try and close the empathy gap between international troops and the nationals or the different tribes, to create better communication so they can understand why we're there. Granted, the bigger picture, you know, we didn't really face, at least I didn't face it back then, but the point is, at that time, Facebook and all these other companies were beginning to really accelerate their use of machine learning to begin to map people's behaviors into what they do and increase their bottom line. So you would imagine that these universities who train these students to learn these tools would have also taught them the true impact, what it means to essentially affect people's behavior, and that it's wrong, right? Because we're dealing with we're trapped in a design space. We're trapped in the artificial intelligence design space. The result of artificial intelligence is a tool that's going to manipulate someone. Whether your intent is that it's going to be good or it happens to be bad, the point is, if you're creating a prediction tool that is human facing, you have to know that you're going to intervene with someone's sovereignty and capability to think for themselves. The only alternative to that is literacy, right? And so how do we begin to expose what it means to be literate in a true cybernetic ecology? That's what I was thinking. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Manuel. I appreciate you bringing that in and this important discussion. We've got Heather on the stage. I want to give her an opportunity to make a comment, ask a question. Heather, the mic is yours. This is Elizabeth. I'm done speaking for now.
Hey, Elizabeth, thank you so much. This is Heather speaking. So basically, I just wanted to piggyback on things that have already been said. Brought up art, and then talking about we're in another moment, like printing press moment, where we have people who do not have digital literacy. And I am somebody who is a communications and marketing person that is trying to use those tools, and my extroverted communications nature paired with my research in ethical tech to be able to communicate these things to the general public. Because what I'm seeing is there's usually a problem with, there are those of us who are informed, and what I see is a trend of people being, not speaking in the way that the general public might be able to relate to. It's almost as if we're too cerebral or we're too literal in the way that we present information. It's not necessarily how people interact with information, which is where art can play a part, for example, like social media. So I've had several of my friends suggest that I should be, creating social media pages to do really basic, like influencing, where it's just really step by step, like, hey, what is the difference between dis and misinformation? Or do you know what it means that when your data is collected? Like, I've been running an experiment with people I know where I've asked them, like, okay, so you're aware that these companies are collecting data from you, right? And it's like almost everyone says yes. And then I ask them, do you know what that means? And then no one knows what that means. So there are people who are like, oh yeah, companies, they saw the social dilemma, they understand that their data is being collected, but they don't actually know what it means and they don't know why it's a problem. And those really, really basic things are what we need to communicate to the general society. A lot of times we're getting caught up in these, much more complex issues that people aren't even ready for because they don't have their ABCs. And so we need to be giving people the ABCs. But one of my curiosities has been is if I even try to do this on social media, are algorithms going to block me from educating people about this? Because then it'll inform people to a level where they may not be as marketable. And so it's like, how do we even work within that system? And of course, I won't really know until I try, but it's just, this is absolutely necessary. We really need to have accessible digital literacy information and accessible to people who come from backgrounds that we do not share on this stage, and backgrounds that, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different communication styles, different understandings of ethics across, geographical regions in the world. Like there are so many different ways that we need to be communicating. And with that, I'll stop. Thanks. And I'm done.
Thank you so much, Heather. I saw Cody may have come off mic. I would like to actually ask Cody if you'd like to respond to Heather's specific question about whether or not there might be blocking occurring on social networks.
Yeah, hey, lot to respond to, but I guess to Heather's point, that was super interesting. I totally agree that a lot of what we talk about in the common discourse around this stuff is not accessible to everyone. Spencer had mentioned the amount of people in the world that use the internet being 80%. I think it's around actually like 60%. There's still like 3 billion people in the world that don't use the internet. And as someone who was working on the team at Facebook, where our goal was to bring these people online for the first time, unfortunately, most of these populations in Asia, Africa, and Latin America are incredibly low digital literacy, incredibly poor, and people who have never interacted with devices in their entire life. So, for example, I went to small town India and worked with some cell phone makers, and we would put up stands in villages, and they would come, and the cell phone companies would pay to have people basically sell, like retailers, cell phones to people on the ground and create a Facebook profile for them in person. Like literally take their picture, create a Facebook profile, and that was the part of the kind of quote unquote education as to like how to use Facebook and like how to use their phone. So the education that will be given from a company like Google or Facebook, like when they're thinking about educating people, it's educating them on how to like use their product and how to stay on their product longer. And for very digitally illiterate people, that will like addict them a lot quicker to this type of stuff than people who have had more experience with using these platforms. That's just kind of one point. As to what you had mentioned, will it be blocked? It seems like, I think it can be done in a way where it is not completely demonizing these companies, but they would probably take it as that, as kind of trying to demonize, the evils of social media and like what they're doing with their data, kind of exposing it. That's probably how they would see it. And thus, I think that it would be algorithmically disadvantaged. But like talking about that, so there's the whole sense of like not wanting to scare people. I think when a lot of people see stuff like Black Mirror, a lot of people like kind of like laugh at it, and it's kind of like a funny thing. And that's kind of how I did, I think, when I first saw it. But I think there's an interesting line to straddle between scaring people, informing people just how kind of ugly and powerful this type of stuff is, while also trying to have a positive bend as to, well, here's something that you can do to like make it help to kind of take control of it and help it use it for just the things that like improve your life, and be able to explain that in a very real way that lots of people can understand. So I think we deal with this huge amount of apathy when people hear the words like big tech and big data, and they have your data, like Heather was mentioning, like people are just kind of throw their hands up like,
I know they have it. What am I going to do about it? Like, they've kind of already won, and it makes my experience a little bit easier to go shopping or do the things that I do online. So I just kind of don't care. So I think that the conversation needs to kind of have a paradigm shift in the way that it's talked about. And I would love to discover some way to do that in a way that does not outrightly demonize the companies that would be disseminating misinformation, like a YouTube or a Twitter or Facebook or whatever. So, but yeah, this is a huge problem that I would love to work on it as well. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Cody. I really appreciate that. And we're at the point in our session where I'd like to, believe it or not, go around the room and, you know, sort of as we're concluding this part of our dialogue, what's next? What are the things that you guys are thinking about? I know you came into the room, you know, thinking about what the most important things are. And as we think of like the next baby steps that are necessary to start to pave the way to where we need to go, I'd love to hear thoughts from folks about that. And I think, Gavin, I saw you have taken yourself off mute. Do you have a quick comment you'd like to share?
So quick, maybe I'll just keep it for a more formal ending response, please.
Okay, sure. But go ahead. Actually, just go ahead. Why don't we just start with you, and then we'll wrap. We'll go in reverse order.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's a. It's like a question of like how far do we have to go back into like the sense-making process so that we can enable individuals to accurately discern what's going on, you know, not just like this myopic, you know, very, you know, you can acquire information about the problems, but there's a different method. There's like this 3,000 or 30,000 foot view where you can go, oh, I see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. All of a sudden, it's a much more embodied, like, oh, I get it. I understand why this is important. And that, you know, not what we think, but how we think, the methodology of, like, how we make sense of these things. I think that is one of the most core issues to me is how do we articulate that we have to take a whole nother, you know, go up another 10,000 feet and say, this is this new perspective that we have to take and this is what it means to be a human on planet Earth in the year 2021. And it's different than it's ever been because of the level of information, the rate at which information is coming into us, and how to process that more effectively. So that to me is one of the things that I don't know how to get. I've seen people address it, and it takes, I mean, I plowed through dozens of hours where people articulated it so well, and it's like how to get people to grasp this concept quickly, but you can't really. So it's such an interesting paradox or conundrum of that we have to reassess how we think.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
yeah. Thank you so much, Gavin. Appreciate you being with us. And also, this is where the bringing together the braided, community of different folks with different strengths, the people who really are masterful at whether it's conveying information via art or just really great messaging, right? This is this multidisciplinary need that we need to band together to figure out. With that, Christine, I'd like to ask you to share your closing thoughts, what you're leaving with, what you perceive as the most important next step. May not be the ultimate step, but I'm turning the mic to you.
Sure. So I think just in general, it's the education and awareness that we need to focus on. We need to find ways to be able to tell the stories of data in the right way to really prepare people for this. And it's not by scaring them. It's not by, just really the information out there. I think, the conversations have to continue, but people need to realize the value of their collective data, what the data that they have combined can can do. You know, we're looking at rare diseases here where that collective data could lead to cures. You know, so really just telling people, letting them know what this data is, what it's worth to them, what it's worth to other people, and then giving them that agency over that data, like we always talk about, to really maybe even the playing field as we build new products, therapies, and technologies. So, Christine, I'm done.
Thank you so much, Christine. Really appreciate that. And Julie, I just noticed, I'm so sorry that I didn't pass the mic to you really quick. I know you had a survey that you put up, I see on the board. Do you want to take a moment and just say a few words, and then we'll come back to the panel.
Yeah, hi, this is Julie speaking. Thanks, Elizabeth. I just sort of snuck that in there. I know the conversation was so good and didn't want to interrupt it, but I did post a survey that we created. It's pinned to the top of the room there if you want to take a look. If you guys, I think this is the perfect audience to get your thoughts on in our survey. So you can just click that link and fill that out. Tell us what you think. This is Julie, and I'm done speaking.
Just for clarity, this is just part of research, not going. Data dignity ourselves. All right, Christine, thanks so much. And Eric, I'd love to turn the mic to you for your closing thoughts. And I don't know if you heard me say, you know, the other piece of this is like recognizing there's ultimate steps, but like, what's the next step? So
I would say the next step is just contact your local representative, regardless of where you find yourself in the world. There are people who are in government whose job it is to pay attention to these things, and I think we have to make that signal strong enough so they hear it, because I think we can have all sorts of activism, but ultimately I think a part of the responsibility of governments is not only to foster and provide the substrate, but also to govern the markets and make sure that there is fairness and equality and equity. So in that case, I would recommend just contact your local senator or member of parliament or whatever form of government you have and just say, hey, what are we doing about this? Like, we see this data being used by other folks. Facebook is in the news. All these hearings are happening in the US and Europe. You know, are we being left behind? Are we doing everything that we can to make sure that we're protected? Because if we're not protected, then imagine how dangerous things become for our children who have been on the internet before they knew how to behave properly or how to behave well. Kind of the whole point of children is that they, think in a new way, and sometimes their prefrontal cortex doesn't develop until kind of their mid-20s, where they're able to properly kind of project out the consequences of their behavior. And in this case, your behavior online or your actions or interactions online and any sort of biometric data that goes along with that is potentially a risk if it's not handled with care. So in Canada, for example, we say that people own their healthcare data. And so you can go to any doctor that you've seen and you can ask for your data. They might charge you for the medium, but you can say, actually, I have a USB stick. You can put it on there. And that's actually a great thing, I think, for the Canadian healthcare system, although that doesn't make it impossible for companies to still use that data. They just have to be very careful when they do so. And then there's protections put in place that insurance companies can't necessarily use any leaked data. So I think it's ultimately that's the direction where we want to see change happen. And that will most definitely incentivize these companies to change their behavior.
Thank you so much, Eric, and I appreciate you raising that and definitely advocacy with policymakers, super important. And I think as somebody said on this call, policymakers are also looking for education. There's a literacy and a learning curve for them as well. So really, thinking about what they need to have pre-digested policy. So it's great to bring them problems. And we in the community also need to think about the solutions, just sort of adding a friendly amendment, Eric, to yours, if you'll let me. Cody, I'd love to turn the mic to you for your closing thoughts and what the next steps are in your mind.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. don't want to take up too much time here, but really enjoyed hearing everyone talking. And I think that obviously we can continue to have these conversations, and like that is important. The unfortunate thing is that the companies doing this are not going to fix it on their own. There's no financial incentive for them to do it, so they won't do it. So it kind of has to be people who care about this stuff and understand this stuff and are thinking and having conversations like this. So I think that it is important to, like it was mentioned, to contact your legislators, to talk about this with friends and family, kind of get their perspective on it. But yeah, there is no Calvary that is coming to save us. It has to be the people who are at the point in life where they care a lot about this because they've experienced and they've seen it. So people like us. So appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
Thank you so much, Cody, and thank you for your work. Linda, I'd love to turn the mic to you. Your closing thoughts and next steps. If you can find your mute button. 1, 2, 3.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
No worries.
It's hard to find it sometimes. First of all, I just wanted to say it's really great to meet so many of the speakers here. And there is so much collective wisdom and intelligence and passion in this group. And I actually have to head out to class, but I wanted to say, great to meet you all, and I look forward to continuing our conversation. So thank you. I have to head out now.
Thanks so much, Linda. And I think your opening comment of policy, maybe, also what we're hearing echoed is the next step. Next, I'd like to turn the mic to Manuel. Manuel, would love to hear your closing thoughts and what you perceive as our next immediate step on the journey.
Thank you. Yeah, so as a parent, and I myself have 2 kids, I want to say that we have to recognize first and foremost that the conversations that we're having are privileged, because if we're here, not only just even on Clubhouse, but in this conversation, we've individuated to the point of being able to have this conversation. It means that things don't necessarily affect us. We have true intrinsic motivation for what we do. But there are generations of people who are born today and in ecology, and it still takes as long as it would have taken 150 or 500 years ago to become to create and model the world from your subjective point of view, so you can essentially have your true agency. It's still the same from the standpoint of the nervous system. Nothing has changed. So when we say that, when we keep facing the public and say we need to educate them, they need to get up, how do we make things simpler for them, or are we scaring them? It's a little bit really unfair to them, because truth of the matter is we live in a country that has 2,000 warheads pointed at different places on the globe, so it doesn't get more scary than that. Telling people that they should be aware of the true impact of technology that literally will determine their potential in the world should not be scary. It should just be. As far as on the other side, the politicians and the companies themselves that are doing it, and their fear of being labeled as like bad or whatnot, again, these are things that we have to just be adult about. A lot of these companies have to die. They simply have to die because what they do is simply wrong. And until we can essentially educate perhaps the educators on what design spaces they should be exploring and should be cultivating, and perhaps design spaces that cultivate life rather than, against it. Perhaps that's where we should start. And I'd like to invite anybody here to connect. I'd love to collaborate on the Guardian Initiative. I think one of the most important things we can do is create awareness in law enforcement, because law enforcement and public safety officers and that community has a lot to say with how artificial intelligence is going to be used in that realm. So that's one area I think that is really important to bring proper perspectives to and have that shared across the world, because they can hold the candle to the politicians. So cheers, thanks for the time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And appreciate also our guests that joined us on the stage. I know we're at our time and a few minutes over, so I'd like to turn it over to Julie to take us home here, if you will. And really deep thanks to the panelists, all the great thoughts, the inconvenient truths that have been, again, exposited in new ways. Julie, the mic is yours. This is Elizabeth, and I'm done speaking.
Hi, this is Julie speaking. Thank you, Elizabeth. Always great to have this room. Really loved this one. I feel like they just keep getting better and better. So thank you so much to everybody on the panel, everyone from the audience who participated, everybody for listening. In closing, I am project manager at Consuli and host for this room and club. Just as we wrap, a few announcements, a couple of things to share from our friends. For anyone who wanted to fill out the survey and didn't see the link, as I did exchange the pinned link at the top, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can find my direct email in my bio. I love hearing from you guys, so any comments, feedback, if you'd like to join our future rooms as a panelist, or if you have someone to recommend, please contact me. You'll also find our social medias there, so you can learn more about Consuli that way. Give us a follow. In addition to this room and club, we do host a long COVID and clinical trials room. You can learn more about that by following our club, Consuli Conversations. Just tap the little greenhouse at the top, give us a follow, check out the information there, and be sure to follow everyone on the panel here today. For those that joined during our event and after our opening announcements and don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy, with experts suggesting our individual data is worth approximately $20,000 per year. We help people take control and choose who gets access to and how their personal health information is used, and if and when desired, get them paid for their data and make medicine better. We do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent, and our members receive smart-matched individualized offers from us for opportunities, including things like participating in clinical trials and data trials. There's no cost to join our movement. You can learn more at consuli.net. That's consuli.net. I want to mention our friends at Radical Exchange are having an online unconference. It's on Friday the 10th. Worth checking out. You can register with the link at the top. Little more information in there if you want to take a look. It looks very awesome. So definitely worth noting. And very much looking forward to our next Clubhouse discussion. Don't forget, we do have replays on here as well now. So if you only dropped in for part of the conversation or you'd like to share it with others, you're able to do that in the Consuli Conversations bio. Just scroll down, you'll see the link. It's great. They've made it so it's interactive. It's basically like being in the room, except for you can't interact, but you can look at bios and follow other people and things like that and skip through the conversation. So check that out. And can't wait till our next room. Thanks so much. I'll leave this room open for a little while so that folks can poke around and look at things and find links and follow people. So thanks again. Always a pleasure. Have a wonderful rest of your day, folks.